Welcome, I'm Todd Robbins. August 6th. A number of horrible things happened on this day. Here's just a handful of them. In 1504 was the birth of Matthew Parker. He was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he became known for his meddling. He micromanaged everything. He had to know everything that was going on, and whenever anyone was doing anything, he kind of had to oversee, and therefore he got the nickname of Nosy. He was the origin of the phrase Nosy Parker. He was the original Nosy Parker, born in 1504, and he died in 1575. Also on this day in 1881, Alexander Fleming, a Scottish bacteriologist, was born. He won the Nobel Prize for an invention of his, penicillin. There you go. He was born in Scotland on this day. He died in 1955. Probably not from an infection that could have been treated with penicillin. So one of the great inventions of all times, if I do say so myself, and I just did. On this day in 1902, Dutch Schultz was born. He was an American bootlegger and gangster, and just a bit of a loose cannon. He was one of the mob bosses during the 1920s and early 30s in New York City here. He worked in conjunction with the other gangsters, thus the idea of organized crime, and he was investigated by Thomas Dewey, the state attorney general, and who was rabidly going after him. And at one point, Dutch Schultz wanted to murder Dewey, and the rest of the mob bosses, led by Lucky Luciano, said, "No, you're not going to do that," and because it was going to just bring down heat and all sorts of retribution from the state. So Dutch Schultz said, "Well, the hell with you, I'm going to do it anyway." And before he could, the other bosses got together and had Dutch rubbed out in 1935. Dutch Schultz, born on this day in 1902. On this day in 1970 was born M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong, the Indian American film director known for his dark creations, most notably The Sixth Sense. He was born on this day. Also born on this day, a sweet little girl, JonBenet Ramsey. She was that little beauty queen that was murdered on Christmas Day in 1996. Christmas Eve, I guess. On this day, another death in 1718, Jacob F. Mueller, who was a Dutch thief, but was beloved because he was known as the Robin Hood of Amsterdam. He was 28 years old on this day, and that's when he was beheaded, captured and beheaded, 1718. 1931, it was the death of an extraordinary artist and musician of the jazz age, Leon Bismarck Beiderbecke, better known as Bix Beiderbecke. He was a cornet player who had a tone like no one else. He had rhythmic and melodic ideas like no one else. He had a harmonic sense like no one else. He created some wonderful impressionistic compositions, In a Mist, in a Dark, and things like that. And just a remarkable, a true artist. And like many artists, had a number of demons, and he drank too much. And he died on this day, 1931, at the age of 29. It would have been very interesting to see what would have happened if he had lived on and his jazz progressed, how he would have influenced it and changed and adapted. On this day in 1675, Russian Tsar Alexis bans foreign hairstyles in Russia. Russia, like many countries, looked to places like Paris for fashion, and hairstyles were the big thing, and he said, "Niet, you will not wear your hair in those foreign trendy styles." Well, he made that decree for everyone except for noblemen and noble women. They could embrace this because you got to look good. On this day in 1806, the there you go. On this day in 1806, the Holy Roman Empire ends after centuries and centuries. By this time, it was neither holy nor Roman. It really had more to do with Austria and Hungary and Germany. That was the area that was the Holy Roman Empire. And Francis II renounces the title and becomes the Emperor of Austria. And thus, there was no more. On this day in 1890, at the Auburn prison in New York, a man by the name of William Kemmler, who was a murderer, tried and convicted, and he was to be put to death. And they decided that they would try out a new device, a much more humane way of killing convicted criminals than hanging them. It was a little thing called the electric chair. Well, they didn't quite have the bugs out of it, and it didn't kill him right away. It was not instantaneous. As a matter of fact, it took him 8 minutes to die and several tries. Cruel and unusual punishment. On this day in 1910, the New York City Mayor William J. Gaynor was seriously wounded during an assassination attempt. Which is interesting is that there were photographers there, and they captured the moment that he was shot in the neck. Speaking of that, 1930. This is, I'm going to hold this for the last thing, if I may. I will come back to this. On this day, this is probably, in many ways, the darkest day in modern history. What I mean by that is the history that some can actually remember. Because on this day in 1945, the U.S. dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And it changed everything. On this day in 1964, Prometheus was the name of a tree. It turned out to be the oldest known tree in the world, and it was at least almost 5,000 years old. Oops, it was actually accidentally cut down in Nevada. It happens. On this day in 1973, Stevie Wonder was involved in a car crash and goes into a 4-day coma. I don't think he was driving the car. And on this day in 1991, Tim Berners-Lee releases files describing an idea he had for an invention. It was a little thing called the World Wide Web. There goes the neighborhood. On this day in 2019, lawyers representing 800 Boy Scouts and former Boy Scouts identified 350 sex abusers within the Boy Scouts of America. The lawyers called it the largest pedophile ring on earth. And all over the place, there are priests going, that's cute. And back to what I was going to finish off with here. In 1930, a famous disappearance happened right around the corner from where I'm sitting here in Hell's Kitchen. John Crater, a New York State Supreme Court justice, walks out of a steakhouse on 45th Street, right off of Times Square. He just had dinner with a lawyer friend of his and his mistress, and he was going to go see a Broadway show. And he got into a cab and was never seen again. He disappeared, and he was known as the missingest person in New York. They looked for him, never found the body, perhaps never found the body. And a bit of slang popped up, and it was known as taking a crater, I'm screwed up, but it's basically taking or causing a crater, which means to disappear. And a number of years later, they did find some bones under the boardwalk out in Coney Island, and then years later there was a woman who died, and in her papers was a letter saying, "Open this after I'm gone," and in it she details that her husband was a hitman for the mafia, for the mob, and that he was one of the people responsible for the disappearance and murder, kidnap and murder of Judge Crater in 1930. And the details in there make complete sense. And part of the details was that one of the kidnappers was driving the cab that he got into. He was whacked and taken out to Coney Island and buried underneath the boardwalk. Who knows? So there you go, and there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, by all means like the video and subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification button so you'll be alerted when the next video is spawned. That is assuming you survive all the horrible things that will be happening to you on this day. And if you do survive, I hope you come back here tomorrow and I see you then. And if you don't survive, well, do me a favor if you would. If you don't survive, if you have the opportunity and they're dying, make your last words to whoever's there. Just look at them and say, "You're next." And then close your eyes and pass away. Wouldn't that be nice? So there you go. Once again, I'm Todd Robbins. Good luck.